stretching across the heart of the European continent. From the Mediterranean Côte d'Azur to the banks of the Danube River in Vienna, the crescent-shaped Alps form a roughly 1,200 kilometer long fortress, roughly equivalent to the distance from Chicago to Florida. The 8 countries within and around its domain have been shaped by the Alps' summits and valleys, its glaciers and its meadows for thousands of years. And to this day, its impenetrability and beauty continue to influence the politics and cultural identity of Central Europe. To fully understand what makes the Alps so special for the European continent, let's embark on a journey from the coast of the Ligurian Sea to its transition into the Dinaric Alps and the Great Hungarian Plain, looking at how its peaks and valleys created deep glacial lakes, strange border quirks, vital trade routes, and some of the world's most iconic mountain landscapes. Chapter 1. The Western Alps. On Italy's narrow Ligurian coast, the Western Alps begin almost at the water's edge, rising sharply behind the last coastal hills. Here, where the last ridges of the Apennines taper out, the Alpine arc takes over. From this narrow coastal pass, the ridgelines quickly spread across southeastern France, filling a 180-kilometer wide mountainous corridor that gradually bends eastwards around the Italian Po Valley. In this southwestern section of the Alps, near the high reaches of the pyramidal Monvisio, the Po, Italy's longest river, is born. From here it flows eastwards, draining almost the entire southeastern flank of the Alps before emptying into the Adriatic Sea. This river constitutes one of the 4 major drainage basins of the Alps, with the Rhone, Rhine and Danube each draining one of the cardinal directions. The French-Italian border along the main chain of the Alps is lined with parks on both sides that protect these high alpine landscapes and their fragile ecosystems of conifer forests in the valleys, to lichens clinging on to the highest ridges. At the same time, however, France walks a tightrope here, operating some of the largest ski resorts on Earth, like La Trinvalée, La Plagne or Tignes, right between these protected high mountain areas. The tallest summit of this region is called the Barre des Écrins, which up until the French annexation of Savoie in 1860, and with it the Mont Blanc Massif, stood as the tallest mountain of France. At 4,101 meters above sea level, it allows for spectacular views into the neighboring region, where most of the Alps' most famous landmarks can be found. Home to many of the highest and most iconic mountains in the Alps, including the Mont Blanc, the Dufourspitze, and the Matterhorn. It also holds the quintessential alpine villages and landscapes most people think of when they imagine the Alps. Shared by France, Italy, and a large part of Switzerland, its mountain pastures help give rise to a thriving chocolate and cheese industry. But not everything here is as harmonious as it looks. Since the 19th century, conflicting views of the exact border have turned the summit of Mont Blanc into a sensitive topic. France claims full authority over the mountain, pointing to its role in building infrastructure, running rescue services, and controlling access to the summit. Italy, however, argues that the border should follow the main watershed, which would make the highest peak of the Mont Blanc Massif a shared summit, as is the case for most other major peaks along the Alps. France's claim is reinforced by the presence of Chamonix, a village in the western foothills of the mountain, which acts as the mountaineering gateway to Central Europe's highest peak. Chamonix is so closely tied to the history of mountain sports that it also became the birthplace of the Winter Olympics, with the very first edition being held here in 1924. Following the French and Swiss border with Italy eastwards, we encounter many more of the Alps' most iconic peaks. The pyramidical summit of the Matterhorn, nicknamed the Mountain of Mountains, has long been the emblem of the mountain range as a whole, while summits like the Dufourspitze are a point of national Swiss pride, with its summit lying entirely on Swiss soil. The peak is named after the Swiss general and cartographer Guillaume-Henri Dufour, who spent 2 decades leading a detailed triangulation of the country. The result was a 25-sheet series that for the first time showed every summit, glacier and valley of Switzerland with striking accuracy. The set of maps was so influential that it helped shape the very idea of Switzerland as a unified alpine nation. During the period when Dufour's map series was being created, many of the most dangerous mountains of the northwestern Alps were climbed for the first time. Swiss, Austrian, French, and British alpinists pushed their way up dozens of glaciated 4,000-meter summits in what became known as the Golden Age of Alpinism. It began with the first ascent of the Wetterhorn, towering above the village of Grindelwald, and over the next 10 years led to the first successful climbs of many of these ice giants, culminating in the first ascent of the Matterhorn in 1865. At first, mountaineers chose the most accessible routes, but as time went on, equipment improved and the drive for more challenging terrain grew. The harder lines began to look more attractive. Several of the peaks first climbed during the Golden Age of Alpinism have especially daunting routes on their north faces, and together they became known as the Great North Faces of the Alps. These dramatic walls rise above some of the largest surviving ice fields of the Alps, contained behind the Eiger and surrounded by many more jewels of the Bernese Alps. The ocean of ice extends for over 22 kilometers along the south face of the Bernese Alps, forming the longest and largest glacier of the Alps. Centuries ago, before the advent of mechanical refrigeration, the glacier was cut up and exported across Europe, but in modern times, the ice has become a lot more cared for. Throughout the last 100 years, the Bernese Alps have lost around half of the total glacier cover, and continuous melting thins out the remaining glaciers by roughly 70 centimeters per year, creating an uncertain future for these ice worlds. During the peak of the last ice age, the glacier cover extended far beyond today's limits, and the slow but grinding flow of these ice masses eroded deep basins around the edge of the main alpine chain. As the glaciers retreated from these margins, meltwater of the remnants slowly filled out the depressions carved out by the ice, creating some of the most picturesque mountain lakes in the world. Especially on the southern borders of Switzerland, Lake Maggiore, Lake Lugano, and Lake Como lie in a narrow transition zone between the harsh alpine and the soft Mediterranean climate, resulting in an epitome of tranquility, where densely forested mountain slopes are rising steeply above terraced gardens, citrus trees, and medieval architecture in the mirroring lake surface. From the easternmost of these lakes, Lake Como, a line drawn northwards through Liechtenstein and to Lake Constance marks the end of the Western Alps. But before we get into the second part of this video, did you know that these Alps aren't the only mountain range in the world called Alps? The main mountains of the South Island of New Zealand are called the Southern Alps, which is something I only found out after playing the mountain ranges game in the app JordGlobe Geography, the sponsor of this video. Chances are, if you're enjoying this video, you already enjoy looking at maps and learning about the geographical intricacies of our planet a little bit more than the average person. JordGlobe Geography is here to turn that into a game, where you visually study countries, cities, flags, states, capitals, even planets, and much more. I personally especially like the daily quiz, which ties history and contemporary facts together with geography, or the 1v1 duel mode, where you can challenge friends and online users in global battles of general knowledge. So if you want a more interactive way to deepen the knowledge of the topics that we're already discussing on this channel, download JordGlobe Geography for free on Google Play or the App Store. I'll leave the link in the description below, but now let's continue with the second half of the Alps. Chapter 2. The Eastern Alps. Leaving the enormous peaks of the Western Alps behind, the mountain range as a whole becomes a bit more mellow. While the Western Alps boast a total of 81 summits surpassing the 4,000-meter mark, the Eastern Alps only have one, the Piz Bernina, near the alpine resort of St. Moritz. Its name makes it immediately identifiable as Southern Swiss, because the prefix Piz is used for many major summits in Romansh, the fourth national language of Switzerland that is prevalent here. Just one ridgeline behind the glamour of the Engadine Valley, the small village of Youf is tucked away in a narrow side valley. At first glance, the homes of the roughly 30 inhabitants might seem quite unremarkable, but at an elevation of about 2,100 meters, Youf is actually the highest permanently inhabited settlement in the entire Alpine arc. That elevation may not sound particularly impressive at first, especially when you think of countries like Bolivia, Ecuador, or Mexico, where national capitals with millions of inhabitants sit far above 2,100 meters. But that is not really a fair comparison to the Alps. Because of the Alps' more northerly position, they experience a generally colder climate, and their steep rocky slopes create a sharp upper limit for forests and meadows, especially in the northern part of the range. Above the tree line, villages are far more exposed to wind, cold and snow, which makes permanent settlement at higher elevations nearly impossible. Yet in the pockets where it is possible, the jagged topography has resulted in some strange border anomalies. Following the German-Austrian border eastwards from Lake Constance, a lone valley with several villages strung together on a single road is surrounded by mountains on almost all sides. These villages are certainly within Austrian territory, yet the road connecting them only leads to Germany. This paradoxically makes them an Austrian enclave within Austrian territory, at least when looking at road transport. Just 40 kilometers northeastward, a second border peculiarity reveals itself between Austria and Germany, with a little island of Austria sticking out of the mainland, only touching the continuous Austria at a single geometric point, creating something very close to a quadripoint border. There's only been a single instance in mapped history where a true quadripoint existed, which lasted for 18 months between Chad, Nigeria, British Cameroon, and French Cameroon in Central Africa. But for now, this is the closest that we have, even if it is shared by just 2 countries and not 4. Following the Alpine foothills further east, dozens of mountain lakes across the German and Austrian pre-Alps collect the meltwater from the northern flanks of the Alps, similar to how Lake Maggiore, Lugano, Como and Garda store the southern meltwater. The most photogenic one of these is the little Lake Hallstatt, whose iconic church spire stands in front of the magnificent forested slopes of the Dachstein, a mountain range containing one of the most spectacular natural phenomenon of the Alps. Deep inside this mountain range, a fissure dating back to when tectonic forces folded up the Alps has been further washed out by the headwaters of the Salzach, creating one of the most intricate cave networks in the entire world. Today, a network of 42 kilometers or 26 miles is buried deep inside the limestone massif, of which the first kilometer is accessible to visitors. The system's multiple entrances create a powerful chimney effect, with air constantly circulating through the mountain and keeping the caves at near freezing temperatures year-round. Water seeping in through the soluble limestone freezes almost instantly when it meets the cold air currents, forming mesmerizing ice pillars at the entrance and helping to create the largest ice cave in the world. Standing even taller than the rocky Dachstein and located almost in the center of the Eastern Alps, the Großglockner, with nearly 3,800 meters above sea level, is the highest mountain in Austria. Since its first ascent in the year 1800, it has been a major alpine tourism destination, and today a total of around 30 ascent routes have been mapped across its countless ridges, chutes, glaciers and rock faces. From the summit, its exceptional topographic prominence and isolation allow for sweeping views over the surrounding Hohe Tauern National Park, the largest national park in the Alps, and a vast high mountain barrier at the heart of the range. Throughout this whole section of the Alps, the countless ridges and valleys are primarily orientated in an east-west direction, which has complicated the traversing of the Alps ever since people tried to make this part of Europe their home. Today, there are only a few major passes which allow for high-capacity north-south travel, while marvels of modern engineering like the 57-kilometer-long Gotthard Base Tunnel provide a significant shortcut for rail traffic. Heavy vehicle roads are rare due to many passes relying on steep hairpin turns, which make it impractical for larger trucks to pass. Only a handful of mountain saddles are mellow enough for trucks to handle, and the Brenner Pass at the Austrian-Italian border is the most famous and busy one. Nearly 1/3 of all road freight passes the Alps through this narrow corridor, and its benefits have been known to human civilization for millennia now. Even during ancient Roman times, armies and traders used the Brenner Pass to access Central Europe from the Italian peninsula, but it is far from the only route that people utilized. Following the main traffic artery from the Brenner Pass southwards, we approach the South Tyrolean capital of Bolzano. And to our left, the final region of our journey across the Alps rises above the valleys and stretches all the way to the Eastern Po Valley, the Dolomites. Characterized by rugged pale rock outcrops that are rising sharply over the lush green meadows with tranquil villages and hiking paths. This color stands in stark contrast to the darker granite towers of Switzerland, hinting at the various rock layers that have been uplifted during the creation of the Alps. The Dolomites have been named after the rock type dolomite, which is a sedimentary carbonate rock originating from the seabed of the ancient Tethys Ocean and its distinct fracture planes allow for the formation of these steep mountain faces, angled ridgelines and cliffs, which make the towers of the Dolomites so iconic. Where the area truly shines, however, is during the winter, when millions of mountain sport enthusiasts flock into the many ski resorts of the Dolomites. Starting in 1974, 9 of these ski resorts formed a union among themselves, adding cross-resort lifts to connect the slopes and villages, with a total of 7 more having been added since. Together, this Dolomiti superski area now covers a total of 1,246 slope kilometers, with over half of them being connected to each other and all of them being accessible with a single pass, making it the largest ski resort on the planet. As a global winter sports hotspot, the Dolomites will get the honor to host the Winter Olympics for the second time in their history. Together with the city of Milano, Cortina d'Ampezzo will invite the world for the 2026 Winter Olympics to continue a long-lasting dominance of hosting the Winter Olympics in the Alps. Of the 27 Winter Olympics which have been held or are currently planned since the first edition in 1924, 45% of them have been held in the French, Italian, Swiss, German or Austrian sections of the Alps. This goes to show just how culturally significant the Alps are, not just for Central Europe, but for the world as a whole. Farther east, the mountains gradually lose height and splinter into the Julian Alps of Slovenia before melting into the Dinaric Alps and the open lowlands of the Great Hungarian Plain. Here, the last Alpine foothills give way to rolling farmland, marking the quiet end of a mountain arc that began so abruptly at the shores of the Mediterranean. As a whole, this mountain range encapsulates what it means for natural spaces to serve its community as a place to rest and explore, as a playground and as a retreat. While its natural beauty is at the mercy of our pursuit for development, there are still countless untouched pockets of wilderness left to explore, enjoy, and protect. If you want to explore more of the world's great mountain ranges, you can continue with these videos on the Caucasus or the Rocky Mountains. And if you'd like a more interactive way to test and grow your geography knowledge, check out JordGlobe Geography on Google Play or the App Store to challenge friends and take part in daily challenges. The link is in the description below. See you in the next one. Cheers.